Welcome to the premiere episode of EdRising Hangouts. My name is Grace Worm, and I'm a young educator with a lot of questions. Thank you all for being here, and please join in on the discussion on Twitter with the hashtag EdRisingChat. My guests today are Stacey Hicks, Director of Outreach and Engagement at the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, and Dan Brown, Co-Director of Educators Rising. Both are National Board certified teachers. So I don't know if I'm just speaking for myself here, but a lot of young teachers haven't heard of the National Board or becoming a National Board certified teacher. What do you think is the most important thing rising educators should know about the National Board?
Hi, Grace. If I were starting out and I wanted to learn more, I would probably tell myself at that point that National Board is the premier certification for teachers. So, like we know that there are standards that teachers have to teach students and what they should know, but there's also standards of what good teachers should be able to do and what that looks like. So that's what National Board is. It's a certification process to really highlight and look at evidence of accomplished teaching.
Okay, that's pretty pretty awesome then. Dan, did you want to add something? Or
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just add that when I was first becoming a teacher, I was 22 years old. I came through like a quick certification process, and my idea about like what success meant for me as a teacher was really vague. It was like, I want to help kids, I want them to be their best, I want to make a difference. I had all these kind of like pretty vague, like positive ideas, but how was I able to know like if I was actually doing a good job with that? It was a few years later that I learned about the National Board's taxonomy of teaching standards, of what you need to know and be able to do, what it looks like in action, so you can really sort of measure yourself against what the profession says. This is what really good teachers are able to do. So I think it's extremely valuable to sort of look at that and put language to what you're supposed to be able to do.
Okay, well that makes sense. So did you then explain a little bit more about what the professional teaching standards are, and then Stacey, for you, what the organization, the National Board, kind of is all about? I mean, it's these standards, but could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So the standards are based off of an idea. There's 5 core propositions that we work off of, and so the 5 core propositions are really talking about things that when you sit down and look at them, you're like, oh yeah, I think that's what good teachers should be able to do. It makes sense. It's nothing that's earth-shattering, but it's what every single good, accomplished teacher should be able to do. So teachers are committed to students and their learning, absolutely. They should be able to know the subjects that they teach and how to teach those to kids. And then really thinking about, well, what grade level, and is that grade level appropriate? Teachers are responsible for managing and monitoring student learning. So how can we teach if we don't know where our students are at or where they're coming to and where we need to get them? Also, we think systematically about their practice. And so really thinking about, again, if I want my students to be at this spot, how do I get there? And then also thinking that teachers are members of learning communities. So it's really simple to think that, oh, I want to be a teacher, but you can't do that on your own, right? You can go in your classroom and close the door, but there's so much to learn from other teachers that are out there, so many new ideas, there's so many resources, and so National Board is one of those resources where you can reach out and find what those standards look like, and it really focuses in on your curriculum and your content area that you're teaching too. So if I'm a math teacher, what does good math instruction look like? And how can I bring that to my kids and have a really big impact on my students? And it's also really focusing on what evidence am I going to provide. So I can't just say, well, I taught this and they got a B. Well, why did I teach that? You know, what was the impetus behind it? And so you really have to have a lot of evidence to support what you're doing in the classroom is effective for kids and why we're there.
I'll jump in too. Yeah, that's a perfect encapsulation. And the 5 core propositions fit for any teacher of any level. And the National Board has also created, I think, 25 different certificate areas based on what you're teaching. Like, I'm National Board certified. I did a whole portfolio for becoming an adolescent young adult English language arts teacher. I taught high school English. And there were specific teaching standards for that I had to show accomplished practice in. For example, the first one was knowledge of students. I needed to show in a video, in my reflective writing, in evidence and artifacts from my classroom that I was building up knowledge of students, building relationships with them, and then using that knowledge strategically to help them learn. And this came down to, not just how I did lesson plans, but how I set up the room, who I called on first, even what tone of voice I used, that it was all very, very purposeful to support student learning. And it kind of fit in with like good practice anyway, but then to put language and structure to it was great.
Okay, that's really interesting. So it sounded like it was an interesting process for you as a teacher as well, going through the certification and everything. So Stacey, I know that you taught both elementary and middle school in Ohio and Arizona, and I was wondering about what it was like for you to make the transition. Now you're working for the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. So where do you see that as a teacher going into this now?
It's really interesting because I think when I first started, and my undergrad was actually in business and marketing, so I went back and I wasn't quite sure when I entered college, did I really want to be a teacher? So I was still kind of, trying to figure it out and really thinking about, well, do I want to focus in business? Do I want to be a teacher? And so for me, I was like, well, I'd never be able to make money as a teacher, but I could definitely make money as an accountant. But at the end of the day, it wasn't what excited me, right? And so I think of all the experiences that brought me to that decision, and I decided to get my master's in education. And so for me, it was an interesting process. And so when I started teaching, in Ohio, I knew nothing about board certification. I taught it for a couple of years, moved out to Arizona, and it was my principal who, after I spent a few years teaching, he was the person that said, there is this process that I really think you should think about. And I think he just noticed that I was constantly trying to learn, trying to be a better teacher, trying to improve my practice, and so I was going to all this professional development. And so he said, why don't you think about this process? And he started to explain what it was. It was the 5 core props, right? It was looking at my practice. And so instead of going to all this professional development where teachers and district personnel were telling me, here's what you should do to be a good teacher, I was able to use the national board process to think about what my classroom looked like and why I was doing those things in the classroom, and really start to break down my practice and look at it in a different way that I'd never been taught before. So all of that kind of leads me to this passion for national board certification and what it did for me, because it was such a wonderful experience for my class. I taught 3rd grade when I went through the process, and everybody was involved. All the kids were excited. They were asking me, what are you writing about? Let's see your video that you did. They really wanted to have some type of ownership in it, and so it was a great experience. And so I hadn't really thought about ever leaving the classroom, but then taking this position, it gave me an opportunity to speak at a national level about the power of what it can do for your classroom and for your practice. So for me, it was just kind of being able to find my voice, and that's what National Board is all about, being able to find my voice and talk about what I did as a teacher and what I did as a practitioner. Because I think anyone could sit down and watch a teacher teach, but to be able to get into the mind of a teacher and see what all the decisions that you have to make and all of the reasoning behind it is something that's really important, and that we don't think we get a time to look at that on a daily basis. So that's what National Board was for me, and so that's just, again, continuing to explore my voice, and now being able to work for the National Board, just having a larger audience.
I love that the National Board has really kind of laid down this vision for accomplished teaching, where, let's say you're watching this and you're a teenager and you're thinking about, is teaching for me? Do I know if I would be good at this? How can I figure it out? I think looking at those 5 core propositions, for example, that's such a powerful North Star that the profession has created, and working towards building up your skills and knowledge in those areas and getting more experience in those areas puts you on this road to, if you choose to pursue board certification, you're very well prepared for it. When I got it, I got a salary increase. That's not available in every district, but in Washington, D.C., I was able to get that. And it was just very was a big boost professionally. All the parents of my students were all very aware that I had done this. It kind of like raised the bar. And that's kind of what the teaching profession needs. You know, there's a lot of great teachers out there. There's some teachers we know are not great. But if everyone, you know, who's coming in the next generation is looking at the 5 core propositions, sees this, you know, road to great teaching, and that's how they think about, you know, how you want to perform, I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. And I'm very glad that you did not end up being an accountant. But I would actually love more to hear about kind of your road to being interested in being an educator, maybe even going further back than college, because it seems like when you entered college you had kind of an idea between the two. So tell me about that.
Well, I always loved teaching and my teachers. I had a lot of really, really amazing teachers growing up. But there was one teacher in particular that was really influential in my life and coming into the idea of going into a career of teaching. And he was my high school track coach and my chemistry teacher. And so for me, being able to see what he did for me, it really opened up the idea of the true heart of teaching. What was teaching about? And it was about connecting with students. And so for him to be able to see you know, that I had potential and that I wanted, you know, that he pushed me to pursue going to college. I grew up in a really rural, small community, and so college wasn't necessarily a path for everyone, and that's fine. There's college and career ready. But for me, you know, he saw that there was something there and really encouraged me and supported me, and I think that it was that piece, you know, that he cared and that it was able to make a profound impact on my life, was that was something that I wanted to be able to turn around and say, I had an impact on kids just like he had for me. And so when I went away to college, you know, he drove me to a college visit and said, look at this school, and really encouraged me. And so when I went in, I was thinking, you know, what should I do? And I was kind of flip-flopping, and I didn't really know much about teaching other than what I see. You know, what did I see in my classrooms? You had good teachers, you had bad teachers, you had teachers who were in between. And so I started to ask some friends, hey, can I sit in and look at your classroom? Can I just observe? And again, being able to see the passion that teachers had, it was something that I knew that I could bring to the table for kids, whether they were third graders, whether they were kindergartners. It was something that I wanted to be able to give back. And I just thought that it was a good thing to do. It was, you know, more than just noble, that there was something that had some real meat to this profession and that I could make some impact. And so that's why I chose to be a teacher. But it was really because I saw that there was heart behind teaching.
So he was your chemistry teacher, but he didn't pursue you to become a chemist.
No. No, and I didn't pursue a career as a track star, although, you know, hurdling would have been fun too.
It makes so much sense. And like I've heard it said that like teachers teach students first and content second. Mm-hmm. So it's really a profession that dials up the head and the heart, which I think is well articulated in the 5 core propositions that you showed earlier about being committed to students and their learning, and that's all the language of the profession from the National Board. I'll add one quick thing, is that in the Get Inspired channel of the EdRising virtual campus, if you go to Get Inspired and then Teachers in Action, we have a library of 64 videos of National Board certified teachers teaching in their classrooms. And that comes from a partnership with Stacey and the National Board. They've offered these videos, and the videos come with written essays, reflective commentary, so you get inside those great teachers' minds. So you can see inside their head how they planned the lesson, how everything went, and how they bring those 5 core propositions to life, and what that can mean for you as a rising educator. So I wanted to put that out there, Teachers in Action section on the virtual campus.
That's really cool. So you touched on this teacher who really influenced you in such an impactful way. And both of you clearly think that teaching is such an important profession, which obviously it is. So I wanted to ask, what your experience is from being teachers. Where have you found, justification that this is a meaningful profession in so many ways, in academics, and then, and as you showed, Stacey, how you can really impact someone's life?
So I think I would say for me it's about the idea of growth, right? And growing those, not only growing students, but growing communities. I think you can decide to go into teaching for a lot of different reasons, right? If you talk to 10 teachers, they'd probably tell you 10 different reasons of why they chose this profession. But I think, for me, it was about a passion, and it was about giving back to communities. It was about, for me, also a little bit of social justice, being able to say, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to advocate for what I know is right for kids. And if that's going to be my voice, that's what I want. I want to make sure that every child has access to a quality teacher that cares about them and that knows how to teach them and what to teach them. So for me, that was my passion. I wanted to be able to give back to those communities that needed it the most. And I think, too, another thing that I was thinking about is another reason why I thought about becoming board certified or pursuing. I kept hearing, and I think you alluded to this in the beginning, Dan, people kept telling me that, oh, you're a great teacher. And for me, I was like, what does that mean? That can mean anything. And so, again, I came out of college not knowing what board certification was. And so when I started to dive into the standards and really look at them and read them and understand what accomplished teaching was, I wish I would have known about the standards when I walked out of college or when I walked into college, because I think that would have helped me a lot sooner to know what good teaching really meant. So for me, board certification was a challenge. Was I a good teacher? I don't know. But when I sat down and started to articulate in my practice, I started to see things that I was doing well, and honestly, things that I could do better. And I think that was like the beauty of the process, right? I didn't walk out saying, man, I'm good. I walked out saying, oh, I wish I would have done this differently 5 years ago with my third graders than what I just did now, or what I'm going to do in the future. So I think that's, for me, a lot of the pieces that I just want to make sure that I pass along that information to anyone out there who's thinking about teaching, is that there are standards that talk about what it could look like, what it should look like, and what we as educators can do for kids.
So we just got a question in from Twitter, I believe, and it says, when I hear board certification, I think of doctors. Is this like what doctors do? And also, could you talk more about the portfolio process?
Sure, perfect. So when I think of board certification, I think about lawyers and doctors too, and so I wish that we were at the point where board certification was the norm, right? That every teacher decided that that's what they were going to do. They were going to become board certified, because I think it's so important. And we know that there's such a high percentage of doctors who then become board certified. So if that could be my one wish, that we would have that same rate of people pursuing board certification. But I think it is a similar process. It's an understanding that there is a bar. There is a bar set for what accomplished teaching should look like and what it could be. And so I think that there are nice parallels to draw between those certification processes and the processes. And when I think about this is a new national board, there's a new iteration that we're going through now. And so for right now, there are 4 components that you can pursue when you're going through the process. And so there's 3 that are kind of content knowledge based. One is specific content knowledge, and so that's component 1, and that is you're sitting for an assessment, whether it's a constructed response like writing an essay, or going through and doing some selected response, kind of multiple choice questions. That's all focused on your content knowledge and your understanding. So if I teach math, that's going to be about my math that I teach for my grade levels in those grade bands. So that's one component. The other components are a little bit different. So differentiation instruction is really looking at written commentary, providing evidence of student work samples, what you're doing in your classroom. So that is a component on its own. Component 3 is teaching practice in the learning environment. So again, written commentary is provided. You're looking at videotaped pieces of your teaching and the conversations and the interactions that you're having with students. And all of those are very specific to your classroom. And the last one is component 4, effective and reflective practitioner. And so it's really looking at the evidence of how teachers assess their students. It's looking at the impact that you make as a teacher and the impact that your students are having. So all 4 of those components are packaged together, and that is what is comprised of National Board Certification. But the nice thing is that now you have some opportunity to do the certification process at your own pace. So whereas before, if I was pursuing, when I did the board certification process in 2013, you had to do it all at one time. So all of those components were happening within 1 year. And that's a lot. I mean, we know how busy teachers are. We know that there's a lot of things that you're working on, lesson planning, there's evaluating, there's just, and then you're a whole other thing called your life besides that, besides your job that you do. And so now you can choose to move through the process and select certain components that are going to work for your schedule and your needs. So it's a little bit more flexible now, but definitely tailored to what's happening in your classroom with your kids and what you're doing as a teacher.
And I'll just jump in about the comparison with doctors. I think 85% of doctors are board certified. So it's like an expectation in medicine, in the medical profession, that you get board certified. In teaching, only about 3% of teachers are board certified. So it's not something that's gotten all the way out there yet, though I think that's going to be really important going forward, because like so many people say, and I totally agree, I say this, teaching needs more respect. Teachers should be higher paid, teachers need more respect. That's absolutely the case. The way forward to actually do that, I think, to get that respect that's so deserved, is to function like a profession, in which we have a set of skills and knowledge, and meeting a certain bar is the expectation that everyone will demonstrate this level of competency. And we have a ways to go before we get there, but when the profession kind of polices itself and puts in place these expectations, I mean, there's many other aspects in the teaching profession that are rough, and there's a lot of folks out there that are damaging the teaching profession. But I think, you know, for us to be the change that students and our country really deserve, it's going to require future teachers, rising educators, and the teaching profession sort of coming together and saying, we want to set a very high bar for what we're about, and we want to show that we can meet that bar. And I feel like the National Board has really kind of articulated that bar. So I think we've got a great place to build off of.
Definitely, and I think it sets a high bar for young people who are looking to become teachers to have that to aim for and to, you know, work towards. So I think that that's really amazing. And we're going to move into our very exciting lightning round right now. So I hope you're both prepared. Okay, so what is one song that you listen to before class to get really pumped up about teaching?
I don't know if it would be camera appropriate. I don't know if there's any one particular song that I like, but it's just something that gets you excited in the morning to deal with third graders bright and early.
You pass?
Yeah, I'm going to pass.
So I'll give 2 answers. My go-to has always been London Calling by The Clash, some like old punk rock. But if it was today, like if I was today, on the way to work today to get pumped up, I listen to the Whip It Nay Nay song. I have a 5-year-old daughter who loves that song, and it cracks me up.
Can you give us a little dance of it right now, or? No, I'm not going to do it. Okay, moving on. Okay, what is something that you would tell every future teacher who's in college right now? The real deal.
I would tell them something that I feel like I wish I would have learned a long time ago, not just about teaching, but about life in general, right? It's about being vulnerable. So if you have questions, ask them. And so being able to say, I'm not sure how to do this, is something that can be very vulnerable, but you're never going to learn if you don't ask. And so I think as a new baby teacher coming out of college, you know, I was always afraid to ask my principal, like, I don't really know how to teach this. Can you give me some pointers, or what does this look like? You know, give me some models. But I wish I would have learned to be a little bit more vulnerable early on, and it would have saved me a lot of heartache, you know, kind of struggling on my own.
That's gold. It's a golden nugget right there. Take that to the bank, everyone. I'll say that when I was a new teacher, the thing that terrified me the most was classroom management. You know, students acting out, and worst case scenarios played out in my class. Like there was chaos sometimes. There was fiasco. And what it took me a long time to realize was that classroom management and like planning your lessons and instruction were not like separate things. They were very much like put together. And if you put together like a really tight, engaging lesson, a lot of students would go along with it. But then the other thing that was like really hard to accept is that when students act out, it's not personal, and don't take it personally. Because like when I would get angry and even yell, and I'm like a peaceful person, it would just make everything horrible. And it was like the wrong approach. It's not personal. You have to like be professional, take a step back, and be strategic about what students need and what they're going through.
Yeah, and if I could add, because I am a little bit closer to coming out of studying education in college, not that much different though than both of you, but I would say that there are definitely a lot of resources out there for people who are interested in teachers, in teaching and what teachers do. There's a lot of resources that you can find and ask your professors about and go online. I mean, things like, you know, Educators Rising and other organizations. There's a lot out there to learn from. Okay, so next question. What is your favorite teacher movie, or if you don't have one of those, just favorite movie?
I'm going all in with Kindergarten Cop.
And that is hard to beat. That is hard to beat. My favorite movie is The Godfather, the first one.
Okay.
But my favorite teacher movie, this is a little out there, but I like Half Nelson with Ryan Gosling. He's dreamy. But no, it's an intense movie. It's really good. R-rated kids, so FYI.
I wasn't sure if you were saying that The Godfathers was your favorite teaching movie or not, so I'm glad that
No.
you had two answers.
The teaching role model would be there.
Tough life lessons, folks.
Okay, so what is some of the best advice you have ever gotten outside of teaching or inside of teaching? Best advice.
I would say the best advice I ever got about teaching was that, you know, you always kind of think about parents coming in and, you know, parent-teacher conferences, and the stress that comes along with that is that you're the expert. They're coming to you, and you're the one that's in charge. You know what's happening every single day in and day out. So when parent-teacher conference time rolls around, or when you're having to deal with, you know, the communications back and forth, I think the best advice I ever got was that parents want to know two things. They want to know that you, as their child's teacher, you're knowledgeable, that you know what you're doing. And the second thing is they want to know that you care about their kid. That's it. Two simple things, and you're good to go. And then all the other stuff you have to do. But those are the most important pieces.
That's well said. I don't know what I have to add to that. That's totally.
Is that now the best advice you've ever gotten, Dan?
That was the best advice I ever got.
You're welcome.
I think that lean on your network. You know, all the people in your life that you know, including virtually, the people you know online, that's your network. And, you know, it's like the 5th core proposition of the National Board is teachers are members of learning communities. It's really key to have people you can trust, you can go to, and to be constantly cultivating that, whether it's peers, teachers, family members, experts that you can reach out to. You know, if there's some expert or someone out there that you look up to, they'll respond to you. You know, reach out to them, email them, call them up, use Twitter. But always be building your network, because you're going to need to lean on it.
Okay. Well, thank you both very much. And I think we're going to wrap up now. So everyone else, be sure to check out our lineup of future guests for EdRising Hangouts on the event page and on educatorsrising.org. Keep in touch with us on Twitter with the hashtag EdRisingChat. And I'm Grace Worm, and this has been Dan Brown and Stacey Hicks, and there is power in teaching. So thank you all.